Thanks for hanging with us on this glitch. Welcome again to the conference, and welcome to our kickoff of the HUD track of the education grid. I want to introduce quickly my panelists. I have Margaret Allen with HEM, who we just heard also sponsored our coffee break this morning. I have Tom Goad from HUD, and Liz Ortega. Did I say it right? Yep. Okay. Also with HUD, and then Monica Sussman from Nixon Peabody. We each do have a presentation that we're going to be working through, and if they bring our PowerPoint up, we'll be converting that and putting it up on the screen as we go. But right now we are going to leave it as we were just talking about how much more effective this would be had we had it. Sorry about that, but we still have 4 very effective panelists, and I know that things are going to go great. So I'm going to get us started by asking Margaret to come up and talk to us a little bit about the positive changes with the D4 app, with the newly released map lender's guide. And we're going to also talk a little bit about green building. And MIP question? No, you can't hear me?
No.
You cannot. Now. I'm not going to repeat everything I just said, just in the interest of time. so I'm inviting Margaret to come up and start out our presentation. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm Margaret Allen. I'm with AGM Financial. We're a map lender based in Baltimore, and we're very grateful. I'm very grateful to be here. This is going to go a lot faster than it would have if we had PowerPoint, so let me just blow through this. The question is, what's new at HUD? There's a lot of things that are new at HUD, mostly because, in part because the recession's over. HUD considers itself a countercyclical lender. While the recession was on, it had a lot of work to do. It changed a lot of underwriting standards, crammed them down a little bit, and everybody's kind of relaxed now. So underwriting standards have, from my point of view, improved, and we're going to go through how that's changed. HUD has, for example, at the height of the recession, did $18 billion a year. They're intending to do about $10 billion this year. So they're seeing, and they're grateful for the fact that the insurance companies, the banks, other lenders are back. So we're just working on that. The other reason, but they do want to stay relevant. HUD wants to participate in the economy that way. The other reason they're sort of relaxed a little more is their delinquency rate. That means 60 days late is less than half a point. It really can't be better than that. You don't want it to be 0. That means nobody's making any loans, but it's really pretty good. HUD has 3 goals that it's articulated for itself. One is to increase the production of affordable housing. That generally means tax credit deals, but also means preservation of Section 8. It's got its new green and energy efficiency standards, so that for which you are rewarded if you comply with a lower mortgage insurance premium. We'll talk about that. And it's gone through transformation. It wants to be a reliable, predictable, timely lender. And the way you know that is Tom Goad and Liz Ortega are here. They're from HUD. They've come to talk to us. They want to participate. And we're very grateful about that. So, in brief, what happened to debt service coverage and loan-to-cost ratios? HUD used to have 3 tranches, less than 40 million, 40 to 75, and over 75. They've collapsed those tranches. So now there's just less than 75 million and more than 75 million. Debt service coverage is 115, and loan to cost is 87%. And that's an increase from what it used to be. Same as that was for new construction and substantial rehab. The same is true for 223Fs, which is acquisition and refinance. They used to have a break, less than 50 million, 50 to 75, and more than 75. Now it's just less than 75 or more than 75. And we've got different loan to value and loan to cost, which you'll see on the PowerPoints. We've got better occupancy standards. Used to be every project was underwritten at a 93% occupancy. But that's not really true. If you've got 100% Section 8, you're going to do better than that. So they moved that to 97. If you've got a sub-rehab project that's more than 90% occupied and more than 90% tax credit deal, you can also have 97. If you're if you're at least 80% tax credits and your rents are 10% below market, you can have 95, and then there's a couple more that got left at 93. One big good thing that used to always make everybody crazy with HUD was the formula for annual contributions to reserves. We would just take 6/10 of replacement costs, 4/10 replacement cost, 6/10 of the mortgage, and blah, blah, blah. And so you'd end up with, you know, $500 to $1,000 annual contributions to reserves. But now HUD has a new inspection protocol and a new capital needs assessment, so that if you can demonstrate that you will never go negative for the first 10 years and you will not go negative more than what you've amortized in the second 10 years, you can get as low as $250, which is kind of much more comparable to other lenders like Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. The other good news is on 223Fs, we can do a lot more work without paying Davis-Bacon wages. You can do $15,000 times your local high cost factor, which is HUD speak for getting to you about $40,000 a unit. The only thing to be careful about is start out assuming your repairs are in the $35,000 range, because if you tip over 40, including contingencies, then everybody's hair catches fire, because then you would retroactively owe Davis-Bacon wages, then you have to discuss things with the Labor Department, and this is like horrible. You don't want to do that. The other thing that's new is new contributions to, if you're doing a tax credit transaction, how your tax credit proceeds pay in, which are much improved. The only hard part is you have 20% of your tax credit equity in at closing in cash, no bridge loans. And then there are some other tranches, which would make a lot more sense if I could show you the pay-in schedule. So back to mortgage, which you'll see on the slides. It has to do with what net equity is and when it's paid in, and it's worth knowing about, but your syndicators will all know that. The last thing is the new mortgage insurance premium. It used to be somewhere between 45 and 70. You can get to 25 basis points if you're a broadly affordable project, which means you're either 90% or more Section 8 with 15 years left on the contract, or you're 90% or more tax credit units and your rents are 10% below market. In other words, it's a really safe transaction from HUD's point of view, and it's affordable. So for that, you get 25. For things that are just affordable, you didn't fit those other categories, you get 35. There's a bunch of rules about that. Or if you're green and energy efficient, you get 25 basis points MIP. Because I conflated those two. Tom and I were just talking about that. I conflated those two and thought that if you hit energy efficient, which means you hit a 75 score on your EPA scoring test, that you were green, but that's not quite true. It's green and energy efficient. So you can't just be energy efficient in an old building and get 25. You have to be both. So the most likely buildings that will get energy efficient and green are new construction projects. So everybody keep an eye on that, because that applies to both affordable and market rate. So, okay, did I speed through? Okay, next, Tom's next.
Well, real quick, a question for you, Margaret. So just globally, I think in summary, what you're saying is it sounds like it's easier, the underwriting is getting a little easier for projects to qualify, so maybe more projects could qualify, but then you kicked it off by saying there's less funding. Is that right?
No, it's not less funding. It's just that HUD has the capacity to insure $30 billion a year. Okay. It's just that other lenders they have competitive products, and HUD, while staying relevant, is still anticipating that its production will be $10 billion this year. Okay. It's not that there's not funding. They got Congress is behind them.
Thank you. And I don't know.
So there's several people in the back of the room. We have, I count 10 to 12 seats up here in rows 1 through 3. If you guys want to try to move in, I know there's also people in the hallway trying to get in too. So lots of seats in the first 3 rows. Tom, thank you.
So, thank you all for having us this morning. I'm going to talk real slow because when I got up this morning about 5 o'clock, I went through my slides and I said, these are great. The slides speak for themselves. So I want to tell you how much I really wanted to be here. My home is in Amarillo. And so I tried to catch a plane out of Amarillo yesterday to go to, and I go home every weekend to Amarillo from Fort Worth. I leave out of Love Field. So we all loaded up on Southwest Airlines, and after we're all loaded, they said, you know what, something's wrong with this airplane. And the whole flight's canceled, and you're not going anyplace. So anyway, I got a flight to American Airlines. I called Ken Cooper, who's in the audience, and said, I'm not taking you to Austin. As soon as I get to Dallas, I'm heading to Austin myself. So anyway, I really wanted to be here. I finally got here last night. I went out to dinner with my old boss, Kelly Haynes, and the group, and we had a big time, but I did not party with them because I went back to study my slides. But if you could see these slides, while I was telling you a story, I was going to show you a picture of this Capitol Studios here in Austin. And the Capitol Studios is 1 block from the Capitol. It's affordable housing and has a green environment. The other one I was going to show you was Wildflower Terrace here in Austin. And I guess when you get these slides, you can see this property and the description of this property. And I was going to show you this Travis Street Plaza, totally green environment, totally affordable, totally next to transportation. And lastly, Elder Street Loss, which is a redevelopment of an older property. And I was just trying to see, Margaret, if it says it's green. And it was built in 1924, and it's not green.
Probably not.
But at any rate, I wanted to talk to you a few minutes then. This is the new HUD. And this Southwest region was the first of the 5 regions to move into the transformation of the new HUD. And essentially in this part of the world, across the nation, I think we had something like 11 hubs and 50 some odd regional offices. That has all been condensed down now to 5 hubs, and each of those hubs have a satellite office. So we've gone from something like 60 or 70 offices across the nation in underwriting multifamily loans to 10. 12. Thank you, Margaret. Sorry. Appreciate that. Be looking forward to your next application. But anyway, all the waves have been completed across the nation. And the last one going through transformation right now is California. And that should be through, I think, Tom, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think sometime the end of August. First week of August. So then the entire nation will be transformed into the new HUD. And that means a lot of things. One is the processing times. We've accelerated those considerably. But it also means a new way of doing business. And, we are the government, so we are restricted to some things, and we have to think a little bit like government people, but not 100% of the time. And I see a lot of you out there in the office that have experienced that in terms of the new HUD. That generally when, for example, and I just thought of this example, since I don't have any slides. But if you brought in a transaction and we said no, then it was a no. But it's not a no anymore. If you bring in something and we have a problem with it, we'll work with you and work long and hard to see if we can correct anything that we thought was a deficiency going into the application. So we're here to do business. Also, that when you get your slide, you'll have a slide in there of the organizational structure. And again, to emphasize my point that HUD is open for business, you'll also notice on that slide that each of those individuals listed that make up our underwriting teams and our technical support teams, there's their name, their position, and also their phone number. Now, when's the last time you could call somebody at HUD and get a real live person to speak to you about your problem with their application? So when you get this slide, you'll notice that the region, Southwest region, we have 3 underwriting teams in the Fort Worth office, 1 in Kansas City. And then in Kansas City, also in Fort Worth, we have what we call the technical support team. We also have a slide in there that shows what the organizational structure is. And for now, that's me right up there. And my phone number's on there also. So if you have a problem in moving through any transactions you have every person's number in the Southwest region on this slide that you'll get later. One of the things that I mentioned earlier that we were trying to accomplish through the transformation is to underwrite these transactions in a timely manner. And as you all know, if it's a D4 transaction, we have, it's a 2 periods. We have 60 days at the pre-app, right, Mark? Mm-hmm. And 60 days at the firm application. On an F transaction, it's just a 1 application, and we have 45 days to do that one. 2 years ago, we started the transformation, and we were in Jacksonville, and Ben Metcalf, I was speaking there, and Ben Metcalf said, how is the Southwest region going to do? And I think historically, before we moved into the transformation, we would average timeliness in terms of completing an application. That, although that was a focus, we did have a focus on the number of applications we did. The focus now is not only on the number and quality of applications we do, but also in a timely manner. And I said to Ben, we will achieve above 90% in the Southwest region on our applications. I can tell you now that on D4 and F transactions in the Southwest region, processing times are within 95% of their goals. So 95% of the transactions we do meet the timelines set by transformation, which was the 45 days for an F and 60 on a D4 at the pre-app and at the firm stage. Also, one of our goals was to underwrite, in terms of affordable housing, 5,864 low-income housing tax units within the Southwest region. And the Southwest region is Texas, Oklahoma, New Mexico, Louisiana, Arkansas, Nebraska, Oklahoma, Kansas, and Iowa. Did I miss anybody? Did I say Missouri? And Missouri, yeah. So in that, our goal was to underwrite 5,864 low-income housing tax units. As of the end of this month, we will have underwritten over 6,000 low-income housing tax credits units. I have a slide in there showing the national goals and the Southwest region goals and how we've achieved them. This is for the fiscal year 2015 and up through July of 2016. And I think Margaret mentioned this earlier in terms of the total volume. But for the Southwest region, we've underwritten 134 firm commitments thus far this year and almost $2 billion worth of mortgage insurance. Total transactions in the pipeline right now are 40, 24 are new construction, 12 are Fs, and 4 are E7s. And lastly, there's a slide in there comparing the regions, and the Southwest region average for the last 3 years, 2014, 15, and 16, $3.3 billion in mortgage insurance. That ranks at 17% of the total mortgage insurance across the nation. These are great slides when you get them. My phone number is on there. Give me a call if you'd like to discuss them, but it's a real pleasure to be with you all here this morning.
Thank you, Tom. It does look like at this pace we're going to have time for some questions and answers at the end, so that's good because I'm sure a few of you have some pressing questions. We'll go to Liz now, and she's going to take us through a little bit of the process, right? If you want to, it's up to you, since there's no slides.
I'll stay here. Okay. So I'll make this a little interactive, and I'm going to reach out to some of y'all, and y'all can help us out here. But I'm going to talk about the process all the way from, or starting from concept meeting, all the way to closing. And this is the way it should flow whenever you do business with us. And so what you're going to start off with is a concept meeting. Not every single type of project needs to have a concept meeting, but if there's something that you'd like to discuss, like maybe if there's a project in an area that you're interested in, you can definitely reach out to us and we can give you a good idea of what's going on in that area. But if you do decide to come in for a concept meeting, you're going to want to reach out to Carolyn Wright. And Carolyn is our program analyst in production, and she works for Ken Cooper right now. Ken is sitting over back on that end, and he's our acting production division director. So you'll get your concept meeting scheduled, and we do prefer to have it scheduled within a 2-week time period. If you have any issues scheduling it within that time, please again reach out to us and we'll make sure that you do get on our calendar. So when we do have a concept meeting, you're going to have an underwriter there. You might have a construction analyst, and you might have an appraiser sit in, maybe EMAD every once in a while, and somebody from asset management. So I'll reach out to Kelly Haynes and I'll ask her from her end, if she's coming into a concept meeting, who would you bring from your side? The lender?
The management company?
Management company.
It's not fair for you to talk with. The developer?
Developer.
The architect has been its own.
Architect.
The underwriter?
Underwriter.
No, not the
Lender underwriter.
contractor.
A contractor. All right, so we can have quite a few people in the room, right? And we're looking at it from every aspect. We want to see what your design looks like. We want to know who's going to be managing it. We want to know who's going to own it. Who's going to underwrite it, and so the number of people who do attend, it varies, but you're more than welcome to bring your development team. After we hold the concept meeting, we'll reach out to you and we'll let you know whether or not we want to move forward or not.
How do you feel about conference calls?
Conference calls are fine, perfectly fine. Yeah, we're fine, good with that. Oh, I'm sorry?
Part on call, part in person,
In person and
combination.
Mm-hmm. Right. Every time we send out an invite, you will see not only the meeting place, but the number that you can dial into for that concept meeting. So if you are encouraged to submit your application, what you're going to want to do next is you're going to want to request an FHA number. So I'll reach out to Randy. And so Randy, if you were going to request an FHA number, what information would you send to us?
We normally wait till maybe a couple of weeks, maybe 3 weeks before we're ready to submit, just because after the concept meeting, we're gathering a lot of information. We want to make sure that the information that we receive as we underwrite is going to works. So we don't really we don't request the number until we get to the point where yes, we're going to submit this application. And there's a list of items on the form that we give,
Okay.
such as location, what section of the act, how many units, whether it's affordable or market rate, some other things like that.
Okay. And you would submit your request to Carolyn Wright as well?
That's correct.
Yes. Okay. And we try to get that back to you, give you a number within a couple of days. So hopefully that's working out well for everyone.
Is that fine?
Okay, thanks. After you do get your FHA number, then you're going to submit your application, and like Tom was explaining, either a pre-application or a firm application. That's going to come in directly to Carolyn Wright as well, and that's for the Southwest Regional Office. From there, Carolyn's going to assign it to one of the different underwriting branch teams that we do have. It might end up in Kansas City if it's with Ron Crawford, or here with myself or Mike Buis or Art Wells. And recently added is Lisa Farmer, so she's our newest underwriting branch chief. She joined us from the Office of Asset Management. So more than likely, Mike Buis will get the affordable deals. We do try to keep them within one team, a specialized team, so that we are familiar with those issues that affordable deals tend to face. You will have an underwriter assigned to each deal. That underwriter is going to reach out to you and let you know that they are now the point of contact and everything will flow through them. That underwriter has they're able to reach out to our construction analysts or to our appraisers for any additional help if they need it. Whatever information is given to that underwriter, the underwriter does have the ability to say whether or not they accept it or reject it. And that's going to fall under our single underwriter model. So you might not have just one person working on any one transaction, but you do have one person assessing the risk and making that final determination of how the deal should move forward. We are trying to move away from over-processing these deals and to a more risk-based processing. So we're just trying to figure out exactly where the problems are and where we can avoid any potential problems whenever we do get to a closing. As soon as we issue your firm commitment, you are going to be notified of our, who our closing coordinator is. And so is Scott Crutchfield in here? There he is. So he's one of the attorneys that does tend to close a lot of our loans. Can you tell us about your experience with our closing coordinators?
Yes. So since the transformation is, and once the transition to the closing coordinator system was in place, we've had great experiences with it. One-stop shopping, basically, to get closing dates scheduled, and then the comments, whereas in previous years we would get stream of comments from different facilities within HUD. Some of them repeat, some of them new, and it was a challenge to keep track of who commented on what and who to send responses to. So the one place to go to coordinate the closing schedule, and then the one recipient and then one return of responses to comments has streamlined the process greatly leading up to closing, so that the closing date now, under the new system, unfortunately with everybody's cooperation, has become a much less contentious, much less stressful operation. The closing day is almost kind of anticlimactic, and that's a good thing. You don't want drama on closing day.
Right.
So we appreciate the way that direction has gone and where it is today.
Okay, good. Well, I'm glad that is working out for you. And so you've worked with maybe Crystal Carter, Becky Livens,
right,
and Leslie Johnson. Those are our three closing coordinators.
Through closing Louisiana, in Fort Worth, and in San Antonio, and of course with Houston moving up to Fort Worth. We're seeing Becky for the most part, and then Crystal, lesser, but also the same sort of service in Leslie as well. So again, knowing who to one person per project to ask and answer questions to and from is a huge improvement over what we had in years past.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you. And that is what we're hoping for is more streamlined processing and people that you can actually reach out to, or you know who to reach out to, and to help you make sure that these applications or these projects are moving along.
Liz, how do you feel about filing straight to firm for new construction projects?
That would, if you're going to come straight to firm, we would want you to come in for a concept meeting first. We'd want to make sure that any potential issues in the market are vetted out. That's something, yeah, I would say at the concept meetings where we'd have to make that determination. I mean, we don't always encourage you to come in straight to firm, and we will give you some, warnings, let you know what we're concerned with or what can maybe hold up processing during the firm stage. But, we have done a few. We're not opposed to it, but we do want to vet out the issues before you just do that automatically. And so that's our processing from the time of concept meeting up until closing. Let's see. Does anybody have any other questions? Or
So Tom had mentioned 95% of the time on schedule. Just focused in on new construction affordable deals, 5% variable. What are the reasons that you guys see that get stuck sometimes in processing? What issues come up?
yeah. I would say that a lot of it has to do with environmental issues.
So yeah, so the question was, Tom mentioned earlier they've got a 95% rate of meeting the deadlines, and the question was what causes the failure to meet the deadlines in the 5% of the time that that happens, or what would cause a problem?
So, what's that old saying that figures don't, I hate to use the term lie, but sometimes liars figure. And Jennifer's on to me in a way here, because meeting those goals of the timeline, sometimes we do have to stop the clock. And that would be that if we've come in the application, there's a hitch of some kind, then we don't want that application to sit there and the clock's ticking. And one thing, it kind of counts against our credibility. At the end of the year, they don't. You look at a sheet of paper and then you do it within the 45 or 90, 60 days or not. And so when we hit a glitch such as an environmental issue, we do stop the clock and we say, let's work this out. And so that would be a good issue. I'm thinking that's probably the primary one, that environmental issues are where we have to stop the clock and work through those.
How often is that happening environmentally? It seems like from the lender's perspective, a big thing post-transformation.
I don't think it happens a lot, but it does happen.
I can comment on that too. The environmental issues go out of CPD, not housing. And so CPD had an audit. So they're a lot more uptight about environmental issues than they used to be. Things sort of ebb and flow, and noise is particularly a problem. Sometimes if you got an urban project, soil contamination, soil and groundwater contamination is a problem. And so it just takes a long time. CPD is not of the opinion that they have been transformed, and they are not in a big rush. So, yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. It's not on these guys. They're all over it. But it is in different silos at HUD. Sort of like OGC hasn't been transformed either. And so getting to closing is sometimes better, sometimes not better. One of the issues we ran into was 2530 clearance. If my guys have sort of veered off and got a bad REAC inspection on something else, it could take forever to get that cleared up.
Good question, thank you.
Yeah. And one other thing to point out too is that if it's a Section 8 project and you know that you have to have that HAP renewed, make sure that you're working with the Office of Asset Management well in advance and that everything is ready to go. That Christy knows. Any thoughts from you, Christy? Just yeah, but we do want you to get started on that quickly. We don't want any surprises at the end. We don't want to tell you, when we're about ready to issue a firm, well, your HAP still isn't approved or there are some issues. So please make sure that you do that. And I'll just mention real quickly, we also have our workload share process underway. I don't know how many of you have dealt with maybe having a project in San Antonio, but you have somebody in Atlanta or California working on your deal. I know that we've done some where we had our underwriter here processing one for something located in Atlanta, and we had an EMAD person from Denver also working on it as well, and then our construction analyst was out of Florida. So we were kind of spread out all over the country, but we did get it done. We all are, in every single office, I'd say that we're all very aware of the need to get these deals processed just as if they were here in our home office. So hopefully that experience has been positive for y'all as well. Maybe Ray, have you had any issues, any that you've workload shared?
No, we haven't had any.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, workload sharing is a problem, actually, because what happens is that somebody like maybe Fort Worth is doing the housing processing, and then, in your opinion, where does it close?
It needs to close in the originating office. So if it's something located in Atlanta, then it would close over there. It would close in that
and
office.
That's not so clear to all of the offices.
Okay.
Yeah, so
We can work on that.
it goes back and forth where it's going to go.
Okay. Yeah, the originating office, which is where the project is geographically located, is the office that's going to issue you your number, upload it into the our SharePoint system, and then send it out to one of the offices and say, here you go, will you please process this? The site visit, it will be conducted by either a local appraiser, or in some cases, our appraisers have been going out and doing more site visits, right, Ken? Like maybe they've been heading out quite a bit more. Yeah.
So is the closing coordinator in the originating office too?
Yes, they have each office does have their own closing coordinator.
But even if it got workload shared out, wherever it's going to close is where the closing coordinator is.
Right.
Okay.
The only one who's out of the office will be the underwriter, or for the most part, it should just be the underwriter. Oh, yes.
Does workload share, does it only happen between two different regions, or can it be across the country? Or do you work with several offices?
So we'll need to repeat that question. The question was whether workload share happens in just two offices, or can it be across the country, more than one?
Yeah, right. It can be across the country. Yeah.
So just following up on that, how much are you currently workload sharing for the applications that come in? How many are going to other head offices?
Yeah, really, in the Southwest region, we try not to share our projects. We do like to keep them in-house. We are assisting California a little bit more right now, right, Ken? Atlanta, they seem to have quite a heavier workload, and so we tend to help them a little bit. But maybe about 5 deals or so at a time that we do work on for another office.
So you're not sending anything out, you're actually taking stuff in?
Right, yeah, right.
Yeah, we're keeping everything in our Southwest region that's come in with the key, but we are doing 5 workload share deals. Or San Francisco office.
Okay. All right. Well, if nobody has any other questions,
We'll turn it over to Monica. And Monica, your presentation's loaded.
So figure out how to get there, though. Well, good. What do you do here?
I think it's just page down.
Push down.
Oh,
Here we go. Okay. So you've heard a lot about FHA. You've heard a lot about transformation in the Southwest. And transformation, once it finally happens, is fine. California going through it is still torture. You need your Section 8 contract renewed, forget about it. You need a lot of other things done, forget about it. I mean, it just, they're very busy scanning in their documents and whatever. So it's really pretty difficult. This is maybe a little hard to see. I just wanted to spend a minute on sort of where we stand on appropriations. Can you hear me? September, is it better? Yeah. September 30th is the end of the federal fiscal year. The Senate actually passed an appropriations bill this year, which is miraculous. The House committee passed an House Appropriations Committee passed appropriations. The likelihood, how many people here think we're going to have appropriations by the end of September? Raise your hand. Right answer, no, we will not. We will probably have another year of a continuing resolution, probably a short-term continuing resolution since we have an election coming up. My guess is that the short-term continuing resolution will probably go through about like November 13th, or is it, unless that's a Sunday, maybe it'll be the 14th, and then we're going to see what happens. So if you can see the numbers, and it'll be in on the TAP site, etc. The administration's request, the House numbers and the Senate numbers are really not that far off in most of these areas. So it's like little, around the edges. Sequestration is still the law of the land, but sequestration's been postponed, and at some point, if sequestration ever comes back, it will, sort of bite us in the behind, so to speak. The biggest numbers, as you can see, are for Section 8 renewals. It's not really for new Section 8. There's a little bit of new Section 8 in conjunction with RAD, but in a sense, it's not even really new because you're just sort of substituting from public housing to Section 8 or from expired wrapper rents up to Section 8. It's not really a new award of Section 8. So that number keeps on growing and growing and growing. We've seen a lot of folks in D.C. and we've seen a lot of folks in the tax credit world talk about going up to the Hill and telling their members how important the tax credit program is to keep it alive. we keep on encouraging people to do the same thing on the HUD programs. We are not as effective on getting people to do that. But recently, one of my partners was up on the Hill on a very specific issue having to do with voucher rents for RAD transactions. And the staff was, oh, Section 8, well, we hate that. The program's growing by leaps and bounds. They don't think it's right. They don't understand the growth in these numbers has to do with market rents. That's all that it has to do with. So please, 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 if you do communicate with your elected representatives, in addition to talking about the tax credit program, talk about Section 8, because otherwise we won't have a Section 8 program, and it is something that I think we all, care about. There is, some of the home monies were restored. Home took it on the chin the past few years because, we restored it, they ever passed this thing, took it on the chin because of articles in the Washington Post about these properties that weren't going anyplace, and as a result, Home's been taking it on the chin for quite a while. But again, you will see this, but stay tuned as to what happens on appropriations. I don't think we're going to have the government shutting down on September 30th. On the other hand, you never know, but I don't think we're going to have a shutdown, and hope we don't have a shutdown. So, which means start doing stuff like today, because you're going to need to. In the Senate, you'll hear, for those of you who are going to go to the RAD sessions, you'll hear a lot more on this later, but on the Senate passed RAD provisions, just a couple of quick things. The cap on public housing RAD conversion has been 185. Senate would increase that to 250,000 units. It would eliminate the 2018 sunset date for RAD 1. For RAD 2, it would allow the project-based rental assistance Section 8 rents to be set at comparable market rents, and it would also allow the inclusion of 202 crack properties in RAD conversion. What's sort of interesting is that 202 sort of fits into three categories: the really old 202s, then there are the 202.8s, and then there are the PRACs. And so the industry, particularly the senior industry, was talking about how these PRAC properties need rehab, and you really can't do it with a direct loan and PRAC, so that's why they would allow for Section 8. A few years ago, we had 1 year of SPRAC, which was also Section 8 for the old 202s. Frankly, those probably need more help than anything else, and I don't know why nobody's recommended a second year of SPRAC funding, because that got through maybe a third of the old 202s that really could use Section 8, so maybe that'll come one day in our future as well. Some of the other provisions are that there's tenant protection voucher funding. There's $5 million of that funding for termination of affordability restrictions in low vacancy areas. Both the House and the Senate included rapid rent sub extensions. We talked about some of the cap. There's an extension of the Hope 6 program, but I don't think that there's a whole lot going on with Hope 6 these days. It allows some additional housing authorities to participate in moving to work. This is just, what this program covers. We talked about sequestration a little bit, so I'm going to skip through that. There was a LIPRA bill that finally got signed in law. People in Washington say that if you want to see law, I guess it's easier to watch sausage being made than law. So, things usually take, 5 years or so. Anyway, this did get signed into law. It still hasn't been implemented by HUD. And if you did participate in LIPRA, it basically allows owners to access residual receipts and eliminate the limitation on distributions prospectively. So we've been waiting and waiting and waiting, and we're still waiting. And I don't know if anybody from HUD has any idea when it's going to be implemented, but it still hasn't happened. So hopefully soon. Couple of policy initiatives. So there was, in addition to the new FHA underwriting guide, there was a new Section 8 renewal guide that came out. And one of the things that the guide implemented, it really didn't make that many significant changes other than sort of incorporated policy changes that had been adopted over the years. One of the things that we've been doing an awful lot of is what we call markup to post rehab rents. So when markup to market first came into being, you had to mark up to you could only mark up to the as-is condition of the property. Some of the other programs allowed you to get post rehab rents. So we have now been doing a markup to post rehab rents. If you do not have a construction loan, if you're going to permanent financing immediately, we've been able to get those post rehab rents in place at your closing And HUD then has a clawback provision that if you don't really complete the rehab, HUD will reduce the rents in the future. If you do have a construction loan, you can get a HAP contract that essentially has 2 exhibits that says these are your rents now, and these will be your rents when you complete your repairs. And they generally want those repairs done within a year period of time, but you can at times get that postponed as well. We used to go through a whole waiver process to do this. You don't need to do it through waivers anymore. One of the big provisions in the new Section 8 renewal guide has to do with comp studies. So if you were historically marking up to market, you got a comparability study, and HUD then ordered a third-party RCS. Somebody talked about the silos. It's not housing who orders the RCSs, it's through admin. So you're ready to move your deal, and guess what? Nobody ordered a comp study, and there's no money for a comp study, and they can only order 2 every 6 months or whatever nonsense you have from various offices. So it was a very frustrating process. So in an effort to try to make life a little bit easier, what HUD came out with in the new renewal guide is a provision that says that if your median rent, and I'm going to spend a minute talking about that, does not exceed 140% of the median zip code rent, you don't need a second comp study. Okay, so HUD actually publishes this number of median zip code rent. It's now 2016. They're using the 2015 numbers because they base it off of some census information. And the best way for me to describe what the median rent is in your property is if you have a 100-unit building that has 51 bedroom units and 52 bedroom units, you use the 2-bedroom unit because that is your 51st unit. There's no 50 and a half unit. Your 51st unit is the median. So you compare the rent from your comp study for the 2-bedroom rent to this published number. If it doesn't exceed that number, then a second comp study is not required. That doesn't mean that HUD's not going to do analysis and HUD's not going to look at it. They can, they will, et cetera, et cetera. If you exceed that 140 number, and that is not just for marking up to market, that is any time you submit a comp study to HUD, a second comp study is required. So if you've done a 20-year renewal and every 5 years you're supposed to get a new comp study to do mark up, up or down, whatever the case may be, and if your number at that point goes above 140, you're into second comp study land. So what's happening on many of these tax credit transactions and preservation transactions is that you may be under an existing HAP contract. You may have 4 years left to go under your existing HAP contract. Your lender, your investor, their grandmothers, everybody wants a new 20-year contract. So HUD has gotten to become very cooperative in doing what they call an early termination of your HAP and allowing for a new 20-year contract. As a note, if your Section 8 contract was originally through a state housing finance agency, you need their approval to do that as well, to do the early termination. Anyway, so they'll do a termination. You can then do your new rents and you get your new 20-year contract. But it's a process. So for talking about, I think Liz talked about getting your Section 8 piece lined up on time. And maybe somebody from HUD can explain why this happens. If you do an early termination, the money under your existing HAP is returned. And they have to order new money. It's not like they just take the existing money and add it. They have to order new money. And that, again, doesn't come through housing. That comes through, I don't know where it comes. It's in the system of the financial people. It doesn't happen overnight. And every time you go in there and you say, my closing's going to be on so-and-so date, I need to have it, I need my new HAP in place. And sure, no problem. And what are we doing at the 11th and a half hour? Where's the HAP? Where's the money? Where's the HAP? Where's the money? Where's the HAP? So this is just give yourself lots and lots of lead time on that. It is I don't know why that hasn't been transformed yet. I don't know why it's become so difficult because there's really no reason for it, but that's happened. We are also seeing in some situations where folks are saying, getting messages from HUD. I don't think it's happened here in the Southwest, but messages from HUD saying, we don't have any money. And you go, of course there's money. Why are you saying there's no money? And their HAP payments are coming slowly too. So it's unclear what's going on with that. If you need a second comp study, and if you are using an FHA loan, you can use your FHA appraisal, the FHA lender's appraisal, in lieu of a second comp study. That's at the time of your closing. If you do a 20-year renewal and your 5-year cycle for doing a new comp studies up, you don't have a new FHA appraisal at that time. So you can go ahead and use your FHA appraisal if you're doing an FHA transaction. So that, lots of good stuff with Section 8. The 140 is probably the most interesting thing. There are lots of places in the country where, as a result of that 140 zip code, a second comp study is not required. We are finding, we're trying to keep track of it, we are finding in the high cost areas, the West Coast, Boston, New York, other places like that, every single rent, post-to-market rent is above the 140. So this was supposed to be reducing a burden for second comp studies, and it may turn out that in high-cost areas, the 140 number is just not a good enough number or whatever, because it's more and more. Some places it's more and more as opposed to less and less. In the world of 236s, one of the policy initiatives is that you can do what's called a re-decoupling. So if you did a decoupling and you now want to refinance because the interest rates are low or whatever, you can do a re-decoupling. What many of our clients are doing instead of a re-decoupling is saying, you know what, I have 2 years left of IRP to go. It's really not worth it. Take the money back and you can get out of it. And if you end up doing the termination, you eliminate the limitation on distribution. So lots of people are looking at that as well. One of the things that's been in both law and then sort of permanent law as well as in appropriations annually is the ability to move Section 8 from one place to the other. There are really two big statutory provisions related to this. One is just moving Section 8, and one is if you have Section 8 use agreement or mortgage. I don't know that we've really seen mortgages moved, but because it's sort of weird to move a mortgage, but we have seen plenty of Section 8. So that Section 8 authority has been on the books for 20 some odd years. HUD came out with a policy notice about a year ago for 2 sentences in the statute. They came out with a 40-page notice. But the good news is you can move Section 8. There's a lot of focus on sort of communities of opportunity, et cetera, et cetera. And we have seen quite a bit of this happening where the property may be in a location that is really not desirable anymore, and it just makes more sense to take that subsidy and move it someplace else. For residents who don't want to go, the notice allows for providing those residents with vouchers. I've had many people say to me, clients say to me, well, I have a 300-unit property and I'd like to move it, and can I get 300 vouchers for the residents and then also move the Section 8? And I said, I don't think HUD's going to approve that. I mean, I think if 1 or 2 or 5, there's no magic number, don't want to go, I could see them saying, okay, here are vouchers for those residents. We did see one that got approved, but they were like 3 little properties. One was like 15 units and one was 17 units, and nobody wanted to go, and they were pretty small, and I was frankly a little surprised that HUD approved, vouchering out everybody as well as moving the subsidy. But I think if you have a 300-unit property and everybody says, hell no, we're not interested in going, I don't think HUD's going to approve that, and the HUD folks can chime in on that if they'd like. On transferring Section 8, if you have a use agreement, a HUD use agreement, a PED use agreement, mark-to-market use agreement, whatever the case may be, you can also move from one location to another. In the statute, that requires that the existing property be either physically obsolete or financially non-viable, as well as a number of other things. So that's a higher threshold to move the use agreement than just moving a Section 8. But it's something to think about, because you may have properties that, we've seen a lot of preservation, a lot of rehab of existing properties, but sometimes you just say it just doesn't make sense. It makes more sense to just move it to someplace else, whether it's a new tax credit deal or a rehab tax credit transaction, whatever the case may be. So just, it still is preservation. It's keeping the assistance. It's keeping the affordability. It just may not make sense to do it where it is. One of the other things that's going on with Section 8, and I don't know if it's made it in the news here, there was an outfit that acquired a number of Section 8 properties and basically ran them into the ground, and both Senator Rubio and Senator Nelson from Florida, these are primarily Florida properties, were on the Senate floor, screaming about, and I guess they did okay on REACT, was screaming about how these places are horrible, et cetera, and nobody wants residents living in bad conditions. So HUD has come out, but not really come out, with new Section HAP assignment HAP assignment transfer requirements that are very much a lot like TPAs. They're supposed to be sharing with the public. I got a deficiency letter from Alabama, and I said, well, like, because we've been doing HAP assignments for years, I said, like, what's the deficiency? They said, oh, well, we'll send you a letter. It's based upon a list. And I said, well, what list? We can't tell you. I said, okay, it's sort of hard to comply with something you don't know about. Another office sent us a quote-unquote semi-deficiency and said that in addition to the HAP assignment, the buyer needs to certify that it read and understood the HAP assignment. And I said, well, why isn't their signature on the document not sufficient? So there's a little bit of each office making it up until headquarters really does come out with what their new requirements are. But they are looking for credit information for the buyer. I've had a conversation with some of the folks in headquarters, and I said, you know, I understand, and again, we don't want, you know, because it's not good for our industry to have people buying properties and running them into the ground. I said, but if somebody is acquiring a property and they're doing a tax credit transaction, you've got 47,000 other eyes already looking at credit. Do you really think that you need to look at credit too? And they, frankly, those other eyes are probably doing a better job in looking at the credit, you know, because if it's not FHA, it's just Section 8, looking at the credit, you know, than what you're doing. And they said, you know, you may be right over there. And I said, and if it's a really good property, you know, and I think the trouble is that these terrible properties in Florida actually did okay on REAC, and so part of the railing was, you know, REAC is not good enough, blah, blah, blah. But if you are doing, you know, a major preservation transaction with tax credits, you probably don't need to go through the same sort of drill. In a sense, the way FHA is sort of, you know, put it into various boxes depending on affordability, et cetera. You know, if for somebody who is not doing that, it may be a different story. And, you know, the tough part with that is that for new people in the industry, and I think we're all encouraging new people to come into the industry, for new people who've never gone through this, you know, it's really hard to show your track record. It's really hard to show a lot of these things, particularly if they've not done Section 8. So stay tuned on that, but it should be coming out soon, I guess, and I'm looking forward to seeing it. Again, you know, the kind of key criteria on a TPA are addressing physical and financial conditions at a property. And if something is, you know, great and it's brand new, you probably don't have to say a whole lot. On the credit issues also, I said, you know, most of the people buying these properties are single asset, newly created single asset entities. They're not going to have credit, so then who do you really want the credit for, et cetera, et cetera. And so some of that is just in the I mean, FHA spent a lot of time developing the concept of key principle and who to look to. It hasn't quite happened the same way, you know, on what they're trying to do on Section 8. So with that.
So we actually, we used all of our time now. So no, it's not your fault. So I do believe that all four of these panelists will be around today in and out of the HUD sessions. And so if you guys have any questions, just track one of them or me down. I can help track people down. I can help answer questions. If you guys would join me in thanking our panelists, I thought it was great. And I think we're going to transition immediately over into the next panel in this room. Do you have a question?
I just, since this is kind of a HUD day, there's lots of HUD people in the audience. If you could take 2 seconds and introduce them to you. I'd like to start, if I can, with Tammy Trevino, who's the regional administrator for the Southwest region. And Christy Newhart, who's the director of asset management for the HUD. Back in the back there, you've already, Ken Cooper's already talked. He's the director of production. Next to Ken is Tom Berniziak from headquarters. He's the director of technical support. And you heard from Scott Crutchfield earlier. He's there in the back of the room. Spruce Keene is here from the San Antonio office, and Spruce is going to speak on RAD today, I think. And I think I've got anybody. Did I miss anybody? Hudsters. A lot of old Hudsters in it, previous Hudsters, I should say, in here. But thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
We thank HUD for being here. Thank you.